Welcome, everyone, for another episode of Standardizing Journey Management. And I'll just jump straight in this time. I mean, the format is known. We've done it a few times, and we're going to geek out on journey management today, like for real. And I'm glad you're all here. So today, jumping a little bit to the end of today, but we're going to go deep in building a foundation for journey management using tags and types in TheyDo. And there were so many questions that are coming in, and Kaspar, our CX lead, is not only enabling all of us to do this at scale, he's also the one behind most of the guides that you've probably seen around that will help you to do this yourself. But today we're going to have a voiceover, and we're going to see Kaspar execute a few phenomenal ways of setting up your journey management foundations. So without further ado, I just want to say for everyone joining today, let's get going. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll be for sure giving enough time for a Q&A. Kaspar has even built in sometimes for Q&A. And today we're going to also set the stage right. So first, zoom out a bit. Why is the journey management foundation important? How to do it? And then we're going to go into all the different use cases. So it's going to be geeking out on products, and I very much look forward to it. So Kaspar, thank you for joining me again today.
Yeah, happy to be here. As I said, happy to dive into this subject. I think a very important one. So yeah, let's get started.
Awesome.
So what will we be talking about? So today we're going to talk about taxonomy. So all the different tags and labels that you can use to tag all the different elements that you can create in TheyDo. And we're going to talk about a few different things. So first of all, what is a tag system and why is it important to set up a taxonomy? Then an overview, what are the different tags that you can use in TheyDo? Then how to create your own tag system. But that's actually just the introduction, those three parts. And what I'm very excited about is to dive into a few use cases, because the basic elements are not that complex, but actually the things you can do with them are very interesting, and I think can really help you a lot. And that's also, I think, where the value of TheyDo really starts to shine. So we're going to dive into those a little bit more with some examples. And then there's a few moments in between where you can ask questions. So if you have any questions, let us know using the Q&A tool. So just ask your question there. Jochem will keep track of the answers of the questions. And then once we hit those specific question blocks, we'll give you some time to actually ask us those questions, and we can go a bit deeper into that. And then at the end, there's some space for Q&A where we can really focus on diving deeper, showing more examples, etc. So yeah, that's going to be the general setup. Let's going without further ado. So let's start with what is a taxonomy and why does it matter? Well, I know Jochem will hate me for actually using a paper example because, of course, the big value of data is that everything is in the cloud. But I do think it illustrates the issue really well. So even in the cloud, right, if you set up journey management and many teams start using it, the amount of journeys and opportunities and the solutions that you can create really can grow quite quickly. So we have some customers, for example, that have even maybe hundreds of journeys. I actually know of one that has 300 solutions or 400 already mapped in TheyDo. So you can imagine that, if that's just one big list of 300 or 400 journeys or solutions or opportunities, it can happen that you lose overview. So at some point you'll have to think about, how do we actually label and tag everything so that we can start filtering, start comparing, etc., so that it keeps being manageable. Because of course, it's journey management. So that's what you have to use the labels for. And that just allows you to do three things. First of all, helps with consistency. So, if you create one tagging system, that can be used by all of the teams that you use. So, for example, all the teams will then use the same statuses, when they refer to, what have we mapped already or what have we not mapped already. Or it's just one way to really standardize the language between different teams, which in turn also helps them to collaborate. So consistency. double work prevention is also a big advantage of actually tagging everything well, because you're going to be able to filter and search things much easier. So you can already find like what's already there. So if I'm starting to create a journey, maybe I can now already look for a journey related to marketing, for example. Maybe I can then look for, hey, what are all the marketing journeys that have been created? And maybe is there something in there that I can already use to start with? So instead of, starting from a clean sheet. Then in terms of insights and overview, there are many tag-based comparison options in TheyDo. So the tags also really help you to make different types of cross sections, which I'll also be showing in depth. And so filtering and creating different cross sections is also something that really helps you to do. So those are also the main things. So you can really filter, in a lot of different areas with tags. You can search using tags, and you can actually make different comparisons using tags. So those basic functionalities might not be the most complex, but actually the things you can do with them, which I'll show in a bit, those are actually really interesting. But before we get there, let's talk about, what are actually all the tags that you can use in TheyDo. So to create an overview of this, we've created a little template, which I'll also actually share later on in this session. So you can actually use this template to set up your own taxonomy. But let's start from the beginning. So there's two main types, I would say, of tags in TheyDo. First of all, we have like the specific tagging systems that you can use for journeys, opportunities, and solutions. So first of all, why are those different? We can use status, types, and groups for these elements. And you can imagine that those things are actually different for journeys or for opportunities or for solutions. For example, if we talk about groups is often used for to indicate, what teams or departments or like domains does this solution, for example, relate to. Or you can imagine that the groups that you want to tag there could actually be different from the journeys, because your solution teams might be very different teams from the ones that are working on journeys, for example. And the same goes for status. The statuses that you use to keep track of your solutions can actually be very different than the statuses that you use to track your journeys. So for that reason, for these types of tags and elements, we've created separate tagging systems that you can use to create specific, tags for these different elements. And I won't go through all of them, but you can see that, they're pretty intuitive, I would say. So for journeys, we have, is it mapped or is it unmapped? Is it in research live, or is it maybe a future, like a prototype journey? And also in terms of types, we would recommend to use, is it a micro journey, a macro journey, or a service blueprint, for example? And for groups, for example, different types of domains. Is it marketing? Is it sales related? Is it DevOps related, etc.? And all those things really help to, specify, what type of journey are we actually talking about? And of course, right, these are all things that you can customize. So this is just a recommendation. You can use it any way that you want and customize it any way that you want. But this gives you, a good starting point to start out from. And the status and groups for opportunities and solutions pretty much follow the same type of system here that we, or like recommendation here. But for types, maybe interesting to mention that for opportunities and solutions, what I've used here is actually something based on the Kano model. Maybe that's known to some people. But basically you say, for opportunities or solutions, is this something that is like a sort of hygiene factor or like a basic expectation? Those are the types of things that, if you don't have them in your app or solution, people become really unhappy with it because they just expect it. For example, the train coming like at the station on time. You just expect that. It's not something that you go like, yay, it's on time. It's like, no, it should be on time. Then you have like satisfiers. Those are things that the more you have of it, the better it gets. For example, a car, if it can go 300 kilometers an hour, well, the faster it goes, amazing, the better it is. And then there's delighters. Those are the things that you really don't expect. But if you actually have them or offer them, people get really happy. So that's one of the recommended ways to use types for opportunities and solutions. Although, you can use different systems as well there. But that gives you a good starting point. And you can imagine that once you start tagging using this, it already starts helping a lot. If you can, for example, track my opportunities, like which are still concepts, which are actually already in progress, or which do we actually have implemented already. That gives you a great overview of like how far are we, for example, with managing and improving our journeys. So just an example there. These are the specific tags. Then we also have global tags. So global tags in TheyDo can be used to map or to tag any type of element. So you can use them in journey steps, but mainly I would say the main application is for tagging journeys as well as opportunities or solutions. So for global tags, we really recommend using the things that you want to use across all of the things that are relevant for any type of element that you create. And also here we have some recommendations on things that we've seen to work really well, some best practices. So for example, we have a lot of companies that use TheyDo have multiple countries, but they might see like, hey, we have some different variations. For example, there's an onboarding. So every country has an onboarding in their framework, an onboarding stage. But we see that every country has maybe a little different version of that onboarding, because the steps might be different based on local regulation or customs or whatever. So if you want to tag that, we would recommend to use global tags for those types of things. So you can create global tags using, what country or area something belongs to. The same goes for channels. You might have some journeys that are very channel specific, while you also maybe have some macro journeys that just give a summary of many different channels. So to map those types of things, channel tags can help a lot. By the way, I'm going to give some actual examples of this later on. So brands is another one. Same thing here. You might want to see like, hey, what solutions do we actually apply in what brands, or what opportunities do we see that maybe overlap a few different brands that we have. To keep track of that, using brands can be really nice. And then another interesting thing, you can actually use global tags to tie all the elements in your management system back to the objectives and the key results that you have set as an organization. So, for example, if one of the objectives is, we want to increase recurring revenue, something very interesting you can do is just create a global tag for that and then tag all the different opportunities and solutions or journeys that you've created back to that objective. So you can really, for example, if you're a high-level manager or you just want to track like, hey, what are we actually doing to reach our objectives? All you have to do is go, for example, to your solution overview or your opportunity overview, filter by the objective, and then you can see, oh yeah, wait, we have like 3 or 4 opportunities related to increasing our recurring revenue that can really help to improve that. So that's another way to just tie everything together and really start managing, your customer experience. So having said all that, a lot of stuff covered. I think maybe this is just the introduction. I think things will get much more clear also when we actually show some examples of how you can use this. But maybe are there already any questions so far?
I think we have some, but before we go into that, like I'm super curious, Kaspar. Like what you mentioned is you have tagging system for the different entities in your journey management system, but then also you have the global tags that you can apply. Like, what have you seen in your experience? Like, do people mix and match, or is that like a super clear cut for everyone to set that up? I mean, there's so many use cases that you can think of, and you gave a few great examples, but like, is there a general recommendation you would make to keep it simple?
Yeah, so I would say to keep it simple, like anything that you can, the specific tags, right? I would really just use status. What's the status? The type for like what we showed here. So what type of journey is it? And here, what kind of advantage do we get for our customers? And then for groups, what teams or departments do we use? And those things can really be specific. For anything else, like anything that's not 3 things, I would already start using global tags. And you can use multiple tag systems inside the global tags, so to say, by just using, channel double dot, what channel it is, or then you can have something brand, double dot, what brands you have. And you can pretty much fit anything you want into the global tags that way.
Awesome. Hey, I'm going to hand it over the mic to Kate Moon. She has a question, and maybe Kaspar, you should pop open TheyDo. Kate, can you be with us? Can you unmute and ask the question yourself, and Kaspar can answer it?
Yes, I was wondering about as far as managing your tags, if there's a way to view all tags and kind of sort through what's even there.
Yeah. Exactly. We're already skipping ahead there a little bit, but happy to show you. So what we do here, if you go to TheyDo, you just go to settings on the bottom right, left. By the way, important to mention, only admins can actually change tags. So that's good to know. So you go to settings, and here you go to taxonomy. And then what you see here is all the different types of tags that I mentioned before. So you have global tags. Yeah, we just call them tags here, but they're global because they apply to anything. And here, for example, you see the whole list. So I can zoom in a little bit, so it's maybe a bit bigger. But yeah, you can see all the channels that we've created, all the country tags, maybe different offers, objectives, key results, brands, etc. So that's the global tag overview. And then for all the specific ones, we have it mapped out like this. So here, for example, you have all the statuses for journeys, for opportunities, and for solutions. And you can also easily go here to actually change them. So if I wanted to change concept or give it another color here, that's easily done. And also, if you happen to maybe have an explosion of different tags, because some people, there might be different admins that create different things as well, you can easily also go here and merge a few things back together if that's necessary, to clean up a little bit. So
I love that. That's actually, I've seen it so many times, right? People write email with a dash, without a dash, with a capital, without a capital, and I have 6 different email tags, but then you can merge them. That's basically what you're going to do. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome, Kate. Thank you.
Any other questions, Jochem?
Yeah, I saw some questions around if we have a guide for this, and I think we do. So I'm gonna, while you continue, I'll find some of the guides and I'll post them here in the chat, because you've written together with some folks at TheyDo some extensive guides on how to set this up, what decisions you need to make. So I don't think you're going to go into them today, right? But I can find them for everyone. Is that right, or am I spilling the beans?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll find it, and then let's go. Let's continue.
Perfect. So, yeah, well, we've already covered this one. So how to set it up, right? So you can go, if you're an admin, you can go to settings and taxonomy, and then change it from there. Something else, actually, to help you plan. The same overview that I just showed you, you can actually download as a template. So we've created a presentation that's, anyone can go there as a viewer. So if you open it up, it looks like this. And then here, what you can do is, you see all the different specific tags for journeys, opportunities, and solutions, with our sort of first suggestion on how to use them. But of course, you can go here and customize it any way you want. And the same goes for the global tags. So these are just some options that we have that you can use. But also here, feel free and go wild on the different types of tags that fit your organization and create the types of cross sections that you need. So yeah, if you want to download this, just go to File, Download, and you should be able to select any of these formats. And then from there, you can customize, implementing your own presentations, etc.
The link is in the chat for everyone. If you want to find it, go to the chat. I think it's broadcasted. And just a quick thing, Veer, you asked, I do not see the same options to manage these tags. It is not only available in enterprise, but it is for different user roles. So if you're not an admin, it might be that it's disabled for you. And then the admin in your organization, he or she is the one that can actually do this or can give you the rights so you can manage that. So I think that is why you cannot see it if you can't have it in your interface. Just a side note.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so I'll go a little bit in how we expect you to actually set this up, but we've only made it for admins because, it's just part of the general setup, and you actually want your teams to use the setup that you create. and not have like a wild growth of like different tags, because the tags is really what we use to create consistency across teams, across countries, across brands. So yeah, you want to have a little bit more control over who can actually and who cannot edit those things. Otherwise, you get the same explosion that you get with all the individual elements again. And that's exactly what you want to prevent with tags.
So people can use the tags to, if say I create something like a journey or an opportunity, if I'm a user, I can just select the ones that are available to me, but I cannot add new ones. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I can show maybe quickly how you can actually, add tags to something. So let's say I have a journey here. And I want to tag it. So I can open this here. And here you see all the different tags that have been used. So here we can see like, what type of journey is it? Or maybe what's the status? Is it unmapped or are we live? Or what global tags does it belong to? So yeah, it's quite easy to actually start tagging them once you've set the system up.
By the way, for everyone who is not yet having the access to this journey overview, we're rolling out a new journey overview page, as you saw at Kaspar's screen. So that will come to your workspace. If you don't have it yet, don't worry about it. We'll be there soon. Your journey tags are just stored in the settings menu at the sidebar, but it works in the same way.
Moving on, let's talk about some interesting use cases. And I think this is where it really gets exciting. Until now, it's just the intro, but like what interesting things can you actually do with this? So yeah, let's have a look at these use cases one by one. So for this, let's start with, creating a framework for multiple brands, channels, and countries. So what's interesting, right? Like if you work with multiple countries or multiple channels, you might wonder like, how do we keep overview of that? And I think the answer is really to create a tagging system and then really start using it well. Because what you can then do, are a few things. For example, here we have a example board with, there's like a summary macro journey that spans across all of the different stages. So this journey covers, I get triggered, I start looking around, and I can compare offers. And that's something we often see, companies that create like one sort of high level macro journey that's maybe even channel agnostic. So it covers all the channels at once. It just gives it the basic overview of those steps. And then you might actually have a lot of like micro journeys that cover specific parts. For example, I compare offers, you might have a little flow that's comparing offers online, or maybe doing a self-scan online, or maybe you have comparing offers in the chat, or even like in your retail lane, you actually might have comparing offers in the store, where you get helped by an employee there. So those are all different ways to compare offers. And so they're all different micro journeys that explain those processes. And, to keep overview of this, you might also be wondering like, well, for example, which of these journeys have we already used in our German countries, for example, which ones are live there? Well, for example, what you can do then is go to country and just select Germany. And go like, oh yeah, okay. So of course, the macro journey, that sort of covers everything. But you see, in Germany you're already able to compare offers online, for example. That's something that that you can use it for. Or you might just be wondering, hey, what journeys relate to the app? So do the self-check online. That's something that we have there. Or which ones apply to the website? Oh yeah, these. So that really helps you to sort of filter out all those different views and show you, what have we already mapped and what's already there and what is not yet. So you might also be wondering, for example, what brands are using what, have implemented what journeys already. So also there you can actually go to, for example, the premium brand is, I look around for a new subscription online. Maybe that's a premium option that's only available for premium users, for example. So that way you can also tag it. And yeah, that's just an interesting way to show that. And a use case that we see a lot as well. Anything you want to add there, Jochem?
I think this is good. I mean, like mind-blowing stuff sometimes, like to set this up, but once it goes and is running, actually, I see a lot of people find it easy to like, oh yeah, okay, so we need to create these journeys and set a bunch of tags so that it's actually into the system. I mean, we even see, and that's maybe an interesting side note, is like here you see like part of a journey framework, right? The awareness stage of people becoming aware that they might need a mobile subscription. I assume that's what we're seeing here.
Yep.
The question sometimes is like, okay, so not all journeys are being like created equally or already mapped out or already known even. So what we see is people creating processes around like, when does a journey get accepted in the framework? And there you can also be a little innovative, say like, okay, it needs to have these properties set up, because then it can be rolled up to the bigger framework, and that can be like a little rule you have in your company. So I don't know if you've seen some of the customers you work with, Kaspar, do this already, but I find it very useful for people to think about it that way.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, like, we also see like two uses, we see a lot of customers that just create their own journeys, their own boards to play around with and stuff. But then when they add it to the official framework that everyone's using as their reference, that's when I would really advise to only put journeys in there that are also really tagged well. And that also means, of course, I mean, it's something I'll explain later a bit, but it also means that you'll have to communicate, your tagging system, and at least explain it a little bit. Because it's definitely something that you have to inform people about, like, hey, when you do this, think about those tags. But if everyone does that, it becomes super useful, as some of the examples that I'll go into more will show you. Yeah, maybe to focus this one, moving on. Of course, this doesn't only apply to the framework, right? This allows you to make different cross sections of your framework, as I just showed, based on channels or brands or countries, for example. But those same tags, because they're global tags, they also apply to all the other things that we create. So, for example, if we want to look at, hey, what opportunities have we mapped, for let's say calling, or maybe in store, improve information overview, for example. That's good to know. If you want to focus, if you're someone that's just focusing on WhatsApp or one of the specific channels or one of the specific countries, you can really use that to organize all the different things and just create those filtered overviews that you need. For example, if you're working in Netherlands, you don't really care about the opportunities for Germany. You just want to know, what's relevant for me in the Netherlands. Well, using those tags, you can easily create those different types of overviews, which makes the same framework really useful for all different countries, all different channels, all at once.
I like that a lot, actually, like using the country lens to do this opportunity, because I mean, I've been in the trenches of UX research for a long time before we even started TheyDo. Like, I know for a fact that opportunities are not created equally, right? Some people in different countries might find different things important. So maybe you have a big opportunity as a product or as a brand, but then it might be relevant to only 2 countries or 4. Like, is that basically the use case that you see here, or is it more like also for an operating country being like, I am in this region, so therefore it's only me? Or would you say that's also the other way around, like I explained for research?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for inspiration, it can also be really good. I know from experience, I worked at a large bank, and I wanted to know, like, I was creating a Dutch onboarding flow, and I wanted to know, like, well, what have other countries done with onboarding, in terms of opportunities, solutions, journeys, anything really. Just give me something that I can use as a starting point. And it was super hard to actually collect all of that. I think maybe in the end, I got one journey from one country. Well, using this, it's literally all it takes is just go in the platform, collect your filter, and just look at what other countries have done already, just to use it as inspiration. I think
that's... Can we like double down on this? Like, who sets the taxonomy? I mean, can you like, is there a specific role, or is it more like the one adopting journey management in the organization? Like, who are the people that define this taxonomy? And then do you also like, what is your experience with the buy-in?
Well, this already skips ahead a little bit, but let's just dive into it. So when you set up a taxonomy, what we often see, it's one of the steps that we always do in the onboarding with new customers, especially when they're international. That's the earlier you set this up, the better it is, because then you can already explain in all the trainings that you do with teams. And you can already communicate it to all the teams like, hey, when you set up a journey, think about these different labels and use them, because it will really help you to keep overview down the road. So yeah, the sooner you do it, the better it is, because then everyone can start using it from the start and you don't have to retroactively go back to all of the journeys and things that have been created to tag them afterwards. So yeah, that's one thing I would say here. And then about who sets it up. Well, as we mentioned before, only admins can do it, because you don't want to have this explosion where everyone just creates tags left and right. And you can end up with a mess, because the tags are actually there to create overview and consistency, and the same type of format that can be used between different teams, countries, brands, you name it. So it is something that we would recommend to do as a co-creative exercise. Get some people together, get a few leads together, for example, and discuss with each other, hey, what are the types of cross sections that we want to make? What are the types of overviews that we need? And based on that, well, some of the examples that I showed before are some often occurring results of those types of conversations. But
in terms of these groups, would you mean then a product leader, a CX leader, and a design leader, or a research leader, or like who should be at least in the room? Like, walk me through it. I'm done. Like, who should be there?
I would definitely say, get a few multiple perspectives represented indeed. So, definitely someone who represents the service design. But you might also think, of course, TheyDo is just the spider in the web, So there's a lot of inputs into TheyDo. There's a lot of outputs out of TheyDo. For example, you might want to get someone who knows a lot about some product owners, for example. What types of tags would be useful for them? Or a business analyst, what tags would be useful for them? Or someone at the C-level, maybe even, we see increasing use by people like that as well. What are the types of cross sections that they need? So once you know what types of views they need, then you can actually start designing different tags and labeling systems that you can use to make those views possible. So anyone that you pretty much want to be able to use TheyDo, get them in the room, ask them, hey, what do you need to see? And then set up the tags accordingly. Yeah. While we're here, maybe some other things as well. That's just a start. So start with getting all these people in the room, set up a first tagging system. But what we also see, it's something that you can continuously evaluate and improve, of course. So don't see it as the definitive thing, but really see it as something that you can keep iterating on and evaluating. And you can always, as we said, merge a few tags if you think, they might not be so useful. You can always add in a few new ones. So it's very flexible. And that's also the way it's been designed.
In all fairness, we at TheyDo also, I think, did it twice to land on the system that we now use. So the first draft is not always the best draft. Yeah, is my experience.
Exactly. And maybe to end this round of tips on how to set it up, starting small is also something I can recommend, especially if you're a large international. Already making a list of all the different countries that you have, or the different domains or teams, that can quickly expand to maybe hundreds of tags if you want to do it very thoroughly. But what we would recommend, what we always see, is that you don't start using TheyDo often, at least with the whole company, with like 1,000 users right away. You often start with a smaller core team, and then from there it starts expanding, and more roles and more teams start using it. So especially if you're thinking of doing a pilot, create the list of the full tags of all the countries, all the teams that you need, but then only actually input the ones into TheyDo that you will actually use in like a starting up period or like a pilot. So you don't oversaturate, unnecessarily, So a few tips here. Lastly, also, last but not least, use emojis. You might have already seen that we've created a few emojis in our tags here as well. And that's not just, of course, it looks nice. So here you can see a little channel icon or a country icon. Of course, it looks nice, but it also makes it more clear what you're actually talking about. People are often still visual thinkers. So a little icon can go a long way to just make it a little bit more easier to find the tag that you need. Yeah. So having covered all that, maybe let's go back to the use cases. And then I'll cover like 2 or 3 more. And then there's also a round for questions. So if you have any questions, just hold on to them and we'll cover them in a bit.
Are specific use case that you have that you would like to see if it works or what Kaspar thinks about it? It would be also cool to hear.
Yeah, indeed. If you think of something that you'd like to see, yeah, definitely let us know and we can go into that. So the second use case where tags play a major role is when you start tracking performance and progress using the framework overview. So as some of you might know already, we have a few different zoom levels, so to say, in TheyDo. So, you have the journey framework, then which consists of different journey boards. And then in those boards, you have all the different journeys. So we have pretty much like 3 main levels, so to say. What's interesting is that tags can really help you to keep overview at the highest level as well. So the customer lifecycle. And I always think this is really cool. Something that I haven't seen being used anywhere else. Because what you can do from this view, well, first of all, it gives you an overview. What are the journeys that play a role in my customer lifecycle, for example, or and what is the performance there? So like how good or bad are these big chapters in my customer lifecycle actually scoring in terms of customer experience? But what's very interesting is that you can also make the translation to, not only how are we doing, but also what are we doing to improve it? And I think having those 2 things in one overview is super powerful because here, for example, you can see like, hey, awareness, it's scoring a little bit lower than purchase. Maybe we want to focus on that, And then what you can do if you've tagged all your opportunities and solutions right, is you can actually go here and go say and see like, yeah, so what if we want to start improving awareness? What are our options here? Well, you can actually create a super quick overview because here you see like, hey, if we sort opportunities by status, we can see like, hey, there are 6 opportunities here that are concept but that are not actually implemented yet. The same goes for solutions, like there's a few concepts here as well that we could use. If you want to have an overview of what are those 6 that we might be able to pick up to improve this, you can actually click on it and it will take you straight to this overview of like what those 6 opportunities are. So yeah, I think that's really cool because that gives you a very quick indication of, okay, if we want to improve this, what can we pick up? The same goes for type, for example. So you can sort it by status to see, what things are not picked up yet that we could do. You can also look at, hey, what opportunities are, for example, things that people expect here. Or if we really want to focus on delighting people, what are the opportunities that we can pick up here that serve as real delighters for people? So you can also choose the type of opportunities that you might want to focus on here. So yeah, not only does this overview give you an overview of the performance, but if you've tagged everything really well using the status and the types, you can actually really quickly identify what you can do to improve those different parts of your customer experience, pretty much. Yeah. So that's another really interesting one, I think. Moving on, what also really helps and that's a combination of the owner types, the owner tags that you can use, and the status tags. What those 2 little tags allow you to do is actually to create a journey backlog and to divide responsibilities based on that. So, a question that we often get is that, yeah, well, great, we've set up our framework. Now what? How are we going to divide this? Well, let's take our example that we've seen before already. So this awareness stage over here. And what you can see here is a lot of different journeys, but actually not all of these journeys have been mapped yet because as we can see here, if we sort by status, we can see like, hey, there's actually a few journeys that we want to map, but they're not mapped yet, So you can actually use those status types to make a kind of, a backlog of, what are all the journeys? You can sort of pre-split up your whole customer experience into different journeys and then actually divide it already beforehand. So everyone knows, what journeys they're supposed to map. And you can use this overview to keep track of, how far are we already with mapping this whole stage, Here, for example, we can see that there's quite a few journeys that are still unmapped or have been planned to map, but not mapped yet. So, like, oh yeah, well, we know what we're supposed to do, but there are still some holes in our knowledge here that we can work on. So I think that's already quite an interesting view to have. But let's say that we're, some of these have been tagged by Jochem. So let's say, Jochem, you go into TheyDo and you want to know, like, hey, what journeys am I supposed to work on actually? Well, that becomes very easy because what you can do is you can go to your full journey overview. So this is the journey repository, right? All the journeys that you create end up in this overview. And what you can do here is simply filter by, let's filter on Jochem. And let's see what journeys are still unmapped or which are planned. Well, actually, yeah, there's 5 journeys that you could start working on because, they've been actually mapped and, they've actually been tagged according to their status. You see like, hey, there's 2 that are actually planned. So yeah, these are the 2. If you want to know like, hey, what am I responsible for? What should I start working on? This gives you this overview. And the cool thing is this is not just for Jochem. This could be literally, you could do this to subdivide your whole customer experience with everyone in your organization. So everyone knows, what am I supposed to do? What do we know? What don't we know yet? And yeah, using those tags, you can create that overview across your whole organization to keep track of all that.
What I also did in TheyDo is like, this is one way of using it, but also, it's a little side note, but creating like personal boards. That is something I know that came up quite a few times, but like once you know what you're working on, you can also create like these temporary boards where you say like, hey, my team or me personally is like figuring out a bunch of these journeys. So I'm adding those mapped, unmapped, in progress, things I want to iterate on in one place, one board. So for visibility for everyone else. So that's also another way to like quickly add a bunch of journeys that are assigned to me that I'm going to work on, are currently busy with figuring out or improving.
Yeah, great addition indeed. For example, this could be one. So, if you're working on a journey and you quickly want to compare it to the current state versus the future state, for example, this is something that you can do. Just create a quick board for yourself, map the current journey on it, and then duplicate it and think about like, hey, how would the steps change, if I actually implement some of the solutions that we found in our current journey? How would it change the structure of the journey? And you can create a future journey as a reference for that. Also using the status here. So just, using the future one versus the current live one in this case. Yeah, maybe this one, and then we'll have some time to answer questions. Because this one is actually very quick, but I think not less interesting because of it. Because there's actually 2 main ways that I see in TheyDo that you can use to create overview of your journeys. In this case, because of course the customer journey framework has really been created to create overview rooted in the perspective of your customers. So, the way that you subdivide your whole customer experience into different boards or stages is really like based on customer jobs. You start with awareness, purchase, use, for example, and then I renew or I leave. And that's all great. But if you're working in a company, there's a lot of times where you're like, well, it's great to think customer centric, of course, but I just want to know, I work in marketing. What are the journeys or the opportunities or solutions that I'm responsible for in marketing? That's also something that's not less relevant in a lot of times. So for that, tags also become really important. So remember the group tags that I mentioned before? Those are perfectly fit for that. So if you, for example, look at the opportunities, if you're someone that works in product and you just want to know like, hey, what opportunities are there that I can pick up with, my product team, for example, or if I'm in sales, like, what could we improve in the sales pipeline? If you've tagged all your opportunities, solutions, and journeys based on those groups, creating those filtered overviews is super easy. So you can pretty much just, use these different tags to create those overviews and inspire yourself, for things that you could start working on or start to pick up.
And these groups, Kaspar, these can also be like, you have a general idea like sales, product, chat, support, marketing, compliance. Like pretty big groups, but
Mhm.
what I also see is like even within, let's say, the CX organization, the design team or the product organization, there's so many teams, right? And they all have different purposes, different missions. So having your team's structure reflect in groups, is that something that we're talking about here? Or would you keep it general? Like say, no, now we're going to keep it like functional groups, or we're going to do it like on a team basis even?
Yeah, good question indeed. I mean, something we also always do in the onboarding is really ask like, hey, what's your organizational structure look like, right? And let's use that structure to actually as input for the different groups that we're going to use your platform. And you're kind of asking like, what hierarchy level should we use there? Is it indeed the highest level, which is what we've used here, just to keep things simple? But you could indeed go one level deeper and say like, okay, actually we have like, 5 or 6 sales teams. We have 7 product teams. And also there, you could choose to actually make it one level deeper by, for example, having tags that say sales stripe team 1 or sales stripe team 2, to make it one level deeper. I would say you don't want to do it too specific here as well, because at some point there's just, you might have 100 groups and you might not be able to find anything anymore. So there's kind of a balance here. What also helps here. So I would say maybe, an individual team level, if that doesn't mean that it exceeds like 100 groups, at least that could be the tip here. What also helps here though is, of course, you have groups that gives the general domain, but of course you can also create owners, right? So with all of these elements, you can assign an owner, so you can link it back to individual members of teams, etc. Yeah.
And isn't that also like in a lot of organizations, this is just the way we're organized into departments, into silos, but the customer journey cuts obviously across that. I think we all agree. I think that's why we're all here excited about journey management. At some point in time, we will have end-to-end teams around the journeys, right? So the groups become less relevant, I would say, over time. But because the organization is structured in a certain way today, you can use them to build some collaboration across the different teams that might not have been organized around journeys. Is that also what you see? Like ultimately that people go into journeys as a way to structure them, but start with groups because that's just the nature of the organization?
Yeah, I always love how forward thinking you are. I agree indeed that, at some point, of course, the ideal is where you don't really have to subdivide this into individual silos, and you actually might create teams that have one person of sales, one person of product, one person of marketing. So that distinction doesn't really matter anymore, maybe. But even there, you might still want to then be able to select, what multidisciplinary teams does this relate to, or so I think the group tag will always have a use for it, to just show, how, what functional units of people are responsible for what elements in the management platform, so to say, to say it in a very managerial way.
Yeah, very polite of you. Very polite of you. I remember we had Maria Abel on a few months ago on the show, and she actually had like this 8-step approach where an organization goes from like figuring it out all the way to like the HR lines are all journey centric. If you are in the process somewhere along those lines, then I recommend you to check it out. I'll put a link in the chat here. It was very useful, but like, in the end, you'll have journey teams, but today you will have functioning groups in the organization that are still vertical.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall we do one more example, Kaspar? I like the way how you show everything. So we have room for one more.
Yeah. Actually, we might have to do another one of these because we didn't even reach the end yet. But let's focus on the OKRs. I think that's a very interesting one as well. So, what you can do here is you can go actually to the solutions here, for example, and let's say you want to have let's say you're a higher level manager, right? And you want to have an overview. Well, we've set these goals. What are we actually doing to, achieve these goals? Well, very easy. If you create those global journey tags, global tags, what you can then do is say like, hey, let's go to solutions and let's see objective 1, increasing recurring revenue. What are we actually doing to do that? Oh yeah, there's 3 things. And what's then also interesting is that you can also see like, hey, how far are we already with implementing these, right? Because here you can see like, okay, 2 of these have already been implemented. Great. but one is implemented, and 2 are in development here. So that gives you an overview of how far you actually are with achieving that objective. Very easy, but I think very powerful as well. It's I love those things where it's just very easy to do, but actually the things you can do with it are very powerful. So you can do that both for objectives, of course, and for key results. So if you have a key result like, let's reduce churn to 1%, very practical. You can also say like, oh yeah, plan sliders or like a test drive function or feature, are very good. But hey, we're still in development there. If that's really important, you might actually use this overview to say like, hey, wait, these things are very important for us. Maybe we should actually prioritize those higher, right? And focus on those things.
So hang on a minute, like you went pretty fast there. So OKRs, objective key results, that's just one way that we see a lot of our customers set goals. It's not the only way, but like basically what you just showed is like using the global tag system to define your goals, your objectives, or your key results below these objectives.
Yeah.
And then basically on every level, not only on the journey level, but the example you gave for solutions, look at like what is actually going on around solving this or achieving that.
Yeah, exactly. So what we've done here is we've simply just added all the objectives that we have and some of the key results that relate to that. Also notice that I've used objective 1, that, and then said like key result 1A and 1B, they relate to objective 1. So you can make that very structured in that way. Yeah. And then those are fixed. So then if you're a team and you're creating solutions, you're creating opportunities, you're creating journeys, you can actually then start tagging those with those objectives if you think that those things will really help achieve those goals. Yeah. And that creates a sort of high level, another way to, cut through all of the things and create different filters and cross sections of all the elements that you have, in this case, based on the different goals that you want to achieve as a company. Well, I mean, we have a little over 5 minutes left, so maybe let's focus on the questions so far, indeed.
Yeah, so if you have questions, drop them in the chat. But I like to know, Kaspar, because like setting up a journey management, the way we create it is like basically building blocks, and you can create tag type anything that you want. Like, is there also a way to say, this is the best practice that you should at least have in place, and then you can start to innovate around that? Or is it really like, no. First, you need to do all this stuff that you told us today, like set that up, have the meeting, talk to the design, the product, and the CX leads to figure out like the language your organization already speaks. Like, or we just say, no, for insurance, here's the playbook. And for B2B SaaS, here's the playbook. And for healthcare, here's the playbook. Like, is that the right way to think about it? Like, is there a good enough approach, or would you say you really need to design it the way your organizations fit?
Well, both of those things, I would say. Interesting that you mentioned it, of course, because what we've created here, right? This overview, which is also something that you can download, as I mentioned before. This is just one of the sort of more generalized, like best practice examples of how you could set it up. But indeed, as you mentioned, there are definitely differences for different types of companies. For example, if we look at healthcare, like a hospital, well, I don't think they maybe have customer success or business intelligence, or like they might have different groups there. So it's definitely true that for different types of sectors, there are actually different types of templates that you could come up with, which coincidentally is exactly something that we're working on, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But also, like, we're going to create best practices for sure, because we have a front row seat in most companies across the globe doing this. But we're also thinking about making this open to our community. Like, you create the best practice you have in your organization, so you can share it around. I mean, there's a lot of people already cross-pollinating and helping each other to figure this out, as it is new. So my take on this is, at some point we'll have indeed best practices, just as you have a best practice to setting up a journey in different ways, like a journey blueprint and the ones that we talked about last week or last session. I think for this specific system, there will be some winners, there will be some losers, there will be some amazing ways to do this, and also some very specific use cases for industries. But I'm not sure if there's going to be one best practice. But having like 80% of this implemented is already a huge leap forward. Then comparing it to like the messy whiteboards, figuring out your data all over the place and having a system of record. I think if you have that set up or thinking about it or doing that, you're doing a phenomenal job. So I think that is the way to think about it. And we're learning as well. So if you have innovative ways that you haven't seen today and we can learn from you, I'd love to figure that out. And maybe to top that off, Kaspar, like one of the things, and I know this is like a little bit more futuristic thinking of how to do journey management, which we didn't see today, but we have like a few minutes. Can you talk me through what you did last week in terms of scenarios where you had scenarios around like using micro journeys to sequence, say, this is what one use case looks like versus the other? Because I think that is one direction we're also moving in as a platform, to have like more of these scenarios built into the product. We're not there yet, but what we've seen was quite interesting. Like, can you walk me through that?
Definitely. So I actually created an example board for this. So the challenge that we're thinking of here at TheyDo is, what happens, for example, if you have a journey that starts with, like insurance journey, starts with inspecting damage to your car, for example, then reporting the damage and then getting a refund. But let's say, that the inspecting damage and the getting a refund parts of those journeys, they're pretty much always the same. But the reporting damage can be different based on the type of damage that you have. You can imagine that like reporting window damage is a different process than reporting engine damage. So the thing that happens here is that you create different, how to report this, you need different types of views, of course, and different journey variations. But if you use macro journeys, that pretty much means you'll have to create 3 different macro journeys where large parts of the journeys are the same and just the middle part is different. And of course, that's kind of a problem because it means that if you change something in the first journey, you'll manually have to update the other ones. And basically the management of all of that becomes a bit messy. So what we're thinking of now is, instead of creating macro journeys in this case, think about if you can maybe split up journeys like this into smaller parts, like micro journeys. For example, one micro journey for inspecting damage, and one for getting a refund, because those parts are always the same. And then what you can do is that you'll have 3 different micro journeys that cover the middle part based on the type of damage that you're reporting here. So one for window damage, one for bodywork, and one for engine damage. The interesting thing, and this is, I think, that's very exciting, is what you can do then is you can actually create different global tags and say like, hey, we have one scenario, which is window damage. And that means that if you go through this journey from left to right, these are the journeys that you will go through. But if I have engine damage, I will actually go through these journeys. So you can actually start to highlight the different paths that people take through all of your micro journey in order to achieve, their goals, which is what you use in those stages here. So that's one way that you can now already start to show different scenarios and work with that without having to worry about all the different overlap and the double management, so to say. And of course, as you mentioned, Jochem, we also know that we could actually create many very interesting specific features for this. But I think this is something you can start using now already. Yeah.
Right. I love that. I love that a lot. Like making them small, sequencing them, thinking about how they connect in the bigger picture, but then looking at the customer experience for only one use case or one scenario. I think that is the early next step of the future of journey management. And I think, thank you, Kaspar, for being with us, for sharing all these examples. And if you are listening this back or you have more ideas on how to do this in your organization, feel free to drop us any note. This is a recording, so we're going to share that with you. In the chat, you'll find the links already that we've talked about, and we're going to put them in the show notes. And I want to say again, thank you, Kaspar.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to be back in a month or so. And the topic is still secret. We're going to reveal it later on. But for today, tag types, taxonomy, I think you did a phenomenal job in taking us through. So thank you, everyone, for joining us from home, from your work, from wherever you were. And we'll see you again for another episode of Standardizing Journey Management. See you all.
Thanks for being here. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.